Alright, this is lesson 2.4, graphs using a point and slope. So the goal here is to be able to write linear functions in point-slope form. So in general, for an equation in the form y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1, use a point, x1, y1, and slope m to graph the linear function. This form is called point-slope form. So we're going to practice graphing using this form. So you'll see in this first equation, if we match things up to this form right here, the y1 is the thing after the minus sign, and the x1 is the thing after the minus sign in parentheses. So the point is actually going to be +1, +3. And that's because the form of this equation actually has a built-in minus sign. So you kind of think of these as, okay, it's the opposite of -3, it's +3 for my point, and the same inside here, it's going to be a +1, even though there's that minus sign there. And then, of course, the slope is in front of those parentheses in a similar spot as using slope-intercept form, so our m is 1/2. Again, similar to graphing slope-intercept form, we first start using our point. It's not a y-intercept this time, it's just any point, so at 1, 3, and then the slope is 1/2, up 1 over 2. I'm going to do another one, up 1 over 2, and then graph that line. The next equation is y minus 1 equals negative quantity x plus 2. So our point is going to be opposite of +2, so that's -2 for x, opposite here, so it's going to be a +1 for our point. And then our slope, it's the thing out front, so there's a negative sign there, so we can sneak in that phantom 1, so our slope is -1. So we start at -2, +1. Slope, it helps if it's just an integer value to make that into a fraction, so you remember that over 1, down 1 over 1. And so there's the graph of that function. Number 3, our x is opposite of 4, so that's -4 and -1 with a slope of -3/4. So go to -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, -1 down here, and then down 3, 1, 2, 3 over 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to list 3 solutions part. We're going to cross that out for now. To find the equation of an oblique line, there's that word again, which means diagonal, not horizontal or vertical. Given the point and slope, so we're going to use this equation, and we're going to use a point, again, x1, y1, so we plot that point, and then the slope, m. So we'll go ahead and write a few equations, similar to what we did with slope-intercept form, where the slope here is m equals 4. I don't need parentheses there. M equals 4, and then we have our, I'm going to just label that here, x1 and y1. So we can plug that in. So it's going to be y minus y1, which is 5, equals m, parentheses, x minus x1, which is 1. Number 8, slope is 3/4, x1, y1. So that's going to be y minus y1. So since it's a -2, we're just going to turn that into a +2, doing the opposite. Equals 3/4 x minus 0, so we can write that in, minus 0. And I think in Math Excel that's how they like you to write that, but another totally acceptable way to write that would just be y equals 3/4 x. Next one, m equals -3, and it passes through this point. So they're just using different ways to say the same thing here. So that's going to be y minus 2 equals -3, x minus -4. So that's going to become a plus 4. And here's an equation. If you notice, m equals 0. So hopefully you're thinking, that's a horizontal line. That means all I need to do is make an equation that says y equals -3. But let's just see how that looks in point-slope form. Y minus -3 or plus 3 equals m, which is 0, and then x minus 8. Now all of this becomes 0, right? So we could write that as y plus 3 equals 0. Again, I think that in Math Excel, this is what they'll want you to type in. And if we subtracted 3 from both sides, that's where we would see y equals -3, which is a typical way to write a zero slope or horizontal line. M equals -6 through the point x1, y1, -1, 0. So y minus 0 equals -6. X minus x1, that's a positive. It's going to become positive. And again, this minus 0 here, we could eliminate that because it doesn't add anything different or subtract anything. It's just 0. Last one. So label my x1, y1. So y minus 5 equals 1/3 x minus 2. Number 11, write the equation of the line graphed. So this time we need to pick a point and find the slope. Notice how the y-intercept is not an obvious clear point, so we can just pick any point now. So I see a point down here that looks like it'll work. It looks like -1, 2, 3, +1, so I'm going to write that as my point, -3, +1, and then let's find another good point. Looks like there's one here. So it looks like the slope is up 1 over 2, so m would be 1/2. So to write that in slope or point slope form, we would just write y minus, I'm going to label those, x1, y1. Y minus 1 equals 1/2 x. We do the opposite, so I'm going to do plus 3. Number 12. So we see there's a point. Now it makes it a little bit more difficult to write it in point slope form if we choose 0, 0, because as you know, a lot just disappears then. So let's avoid using that as our point. So I'm going to choose the point -1, 2, 3, +3. So -3, +3 as my x1, y1, and then my slope is down 1 over 1. So my slope is -1. So we plug that in. Y minus 3 equals -1, and then x minus -3 or plus 3. Now you could have chosen any number of points here instead of -3, 3 that are on this line, so that would change the values here. Now Math Excel recognizes that you can put in various different points and we'll count those correct if they're on the line. Let's see number 13 here. It looks like here's a good point at 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so the point 2, 5. And then another good point, where's another good point here? Maybe here. So going from one point to the next, if I go left to right, that's going to give me a good slope here. So it goes up 1, 2, 3 over 1. So my slope is up 3 over 1, which I don't need to write the over 1 part. I could, but Again, that's going to simplify to 3, and we want the simplest form when we put it in the point-slope formula. x1, y1, and then plug it in. Y minus 5 equals 3 times x minus 2. Lastly, let's see, a couple good points here. Sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what is a good point. I see one here, and let's see. Let's go with this guy right here. So this is the point. Let's use this as our point, and then we'll use those two to find our slope. You need 2 points to find a slope. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up 2. So 5, 2 could be our point, x1, y1. And then our slope is going down 1 over 5. So y minus 2 equals negative 1/5 times x minus 5. All right, we just have 2 questions left here, and these kind of switch gears on us a little bit. These questions ask us to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and use those particular points to graph these lines. And these are particular questions that you'll find also in Math Excel. In order to find the x-intercept, you'll recall that the y value is 0. So we're going to actually substitute in a y value of 0. So I'm going to label this as my x-intercept, and I'm going to plug in a 0 for y, and then I'm going to solve for x. So that means that goes away. It's just a 0. And then, so all I need to do to get x by itself is divide both sides by 5. So x equals negative 1. So that is my x-intercept. So I can go down to the graph and plot negative 1 on the x-axis. Then we go and do the y-intercept, where we substitute in a 0 for x. So you'll recall that on the y-intercept, the x value in the order, or sorry, the y value, no, the x value in the ordered pair is always 0. So we'll plug that in for x. Now in this case, it's pretty much solved for us since 5 times 0 is 0. So we can go to negative 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And, oh, kind of missed there, but there's your line using the x and y intercepts. There are other ways that we could graph this, but when it says to use the x and y intercepts, those are the 2 points that you need to use. We'll try one more for the x-intercept. Plug in a 0 for y, so we would get 2x plus 4 times 0 equals 8. That goes away. Dividing both sides by 2, we get x equals 4. So we could plot that 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the y-intercept, we would plug in the 0 this time for x. So 2 times 0 plus 4y equals 8. 2 times 0 is 0. So divide both sides by 4, and we get y equals 2. Right there. So those are your x, y intercept graphs.